welcome to 26 Black Night Film Festival. You're with PÖFF TV and you're with the segment of Meet the Filmmakers. Uh, we are discussing a very interesting film from Canada. It's Until Branches Bend, and we have the director with us today, Sophie Jarvis. Welcome to PÖFF TV.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Sophia, this is your first time at PÖFF and first time in Tallinn. So
Yes,
how have you received the city so far?
So far, so good. We flew in last night and had a very delicious dinner and got a good night's sleep. So I feel like we've managed to avoid jet lag. And today was quite nice. We went for a little walk around the old town. It's beautiful, like everyone said it would be.
Okay.
And here we are.
It's very interesting. And then with your film, I'm sure like there'll be a lot of questions during the Q&A because with your subject, because Estonia is one of the most greenest and most nature-loving people here. So your film can really connect with how you've developed a man versus nature. So before we come to that, tell me about your journey. You've been as a production designer and then to a director. So what was this escape?
Well, I've always done both in a way. So I went to film school, and in school I was making my own short films, but you're also working with other people on their projects. And I kind of fell into doing production design as something I could offer to help. And then my first film that I finished at school, The Worst Day Ever, actually premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. So that sort of opened a lot of doors for me as a director. But it can be a bit hard to make a living as a short film director. So while I was making my own work as directing, just applying for grants and making small projects, I also started working as a production designer. And what I love about production design is that it's a very creative position. You work really closely with directors, and I love how it really informs a lot about world building for me. So understanding character, understanding where they come from, understanding what their needs are, and creating space, whether it's very grounded and realistic or whether it's really stylistic. It was really exciting to be a production designer because I could work on a lot of different types of projects. High budget projects like big commercials, music videos, but also being able to work on more independent feature films, which is more what I was interested in. So it felt like a natural balance to direct my own work and also do production design. But yeah, I've sort of left the production design behind in the last few years in order to focus on my own work.
But in this film, it actually reflects the richness of images. It reflects because it shows your background of production designing and also the photographic part, which we will come to next.
Thank
So
you.
think about we're going to talk about the subject, what inspired you to pick this subject, which is like man versus nature?
Well, I'd say that the original inspiration for the film was I spent my childhood and most of my life going up to a place called Summerland, which is in the interior of British Columbia, which is where I'm from. And it's a very beautiful place. It's very four seasons. Like there's snow in the wintertime, and in the summertime it's very agriculture, lots of orchards, just beautiful fruit. There's a lake. People go swimming there. It's stunning. And my grandparents lived there, so that's why I was going all the time. And it just felt like a very idyllic place. And so I guess I just wanted to know what was going on under the surface there. That's sort of where the idea came from. They do have a lot of problems with pests because it's such a monoculture economy, which means that they only have, they'll have a whole farm full of just one type of fruit. So they have a research center in that place where they spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to deal with pests that come in. So I thought that was quite interesting. So in terms of man versus nature, I think that monoculture in a way is like a very unnatural thing to do, just in the sense of, you're creating agriculture in a space that necessarily wasn't built for it. So to me, there was some potential there to explore that. Also, the main character is going through an unwanted pregnancy, and she wants to end it, and so there's also that other side of nature going on where,
Okay. Yeah, it creates you're struggling with the nature, and then you move ahead with that throughout your film. Like it gives the glimpse of this idea.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a bit of the technical part of the film. When I was watching it, I saw this very organic grain in the film, and then to see this was shot with celluloid, like on film on 16 millimeter. Why you decided to shoot on this?
I mean, it's just so beautiful.
Okay.
But mostly, I felt like it was the right choice because of the texture of the world we're filming in. It's a very dusty, real landscape, and I feel like the texture is reflected in the 16 mil, and it also picks up the color palette of the world. In BC, we have really bad wildfires every summer now. It's one of those things you can't predict when they're going to happen, but they do happen. And so one thing you might have noticed is that quite a lot of the time it felt a bit smoky, or there was a lot of atmospheric smoke going on. And the 16 mil sort of allows that to exist without it being a distraction. Like I think maybe it could have been worse on a different medium. But mostly we just love 16. And for me, I love working on 16 on set because it brings a real reverence to the experience. I feel like everyone knows that when you're shooting on film, you know, you can't really see what's on the monitor, but you know that everyone kind of prepares and treats it in a way that I think has a really good energy, as opposed to when I've filmed on digital, where it feels a little bit more like you can always get another take, you can always just fix a small detail. I like being able to just have the space set and have everyone sort of on the same page about the importance of it.
It's very interesting to see that very organic image, and you're talking about an organic process also, like in the film. And also, like you take this creative license in the film, that you are bringing this kind of like surrealistic approach in certain part, and like when it's come to reality, it becomes a horror, like with all these insects, like coming, like it looks so surreal, but like it's actually the reality. So like how did you work around this process, like bringing in this insect scenes into the film? It's like a horror.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I'm always drawn to absurdism. Like I do love the idea that the strange things already exist in our world, we just need to look at them. I think that the surrealism comes through elements like the score or some of the behaviors that we see. But yeah, I do think that the bugs, they come up, and there's something about that visual to me that's very interesting. Even early on in the film, we see a swarm of bees that's following a bee truck. And I just love that image because when people are moving a hive of bees, often the bees will have a bit of a party around it because they don't know where they're going, but the queen's inside, so they'll all stay near. So even if a truck is moving, you'll have this swarm that continues to hover around, and there's something very magical about nature and its chaos, but it's still very organized, and I find that very visually interesting. So that was one of the images for me that was something I really wanted to try to show.
Yeah, I'm going to ask some trade secret from you. It's like, how much VFX was there, like in this bug scene, and also like the bee one? Like, was it like real?
No.
Okay.
We had a very strong visual effects team, and visual effects are really hard, and we knew that the climax of this film really relied on having convincing visual effects. Shooting on 16 millimeter film was a good thing because that helps to sort of soften some of the hard edges. But ultimately, our visual effects team was really great. We worked with, they're called Nice Stuff. They're in Kelowna. And our lead artist and supervisor was very committed to doing an artistic film. He often works on big shows, which most visual effects artists do. So it was really nice to meet someone who wanted to work on an independent film. And honestly, I think we got such great results because our editor used to work as a visual effects production manager, so he understands the workflow and he understands the communication pipeline. So he kind of took on a bit of post-supervising and translated my nonsense of what I was trying to say into something that they could understand. So I learned a lot in that process, but because of just really efficient communication, and even with our lower budget, we were able to achieve what I think were pretty incredible visual effects.
Yes, indeed. And like it's not completed if we do not talk about the music scape of the film. And Kiran has done the music, and like there's my question is like it's very interesting. So you use this a cappella, like like vocals, and then like you use a different way of country music is there, and like what was the discussion with your music director?
Yeah, so Kieran Jarvis is the composer, and he happens to be my brother as well. And we've worked together on lots of projects, and I really like working with him because he understands my sense of humor. The film is not necessarily a comedy, but to me there's a little bit of an idiosyncratic bent to it, and he kind of knows how to twist that to my taste. And we talked a lot about what type of music, because it's set in the countryside and there's cars and there's, all that stuff. We didn't want to go the country music route. We wanted to avoid the guitars and the twang. So we got quite inspired by finding very sparing wind instruments. One being a flute. We love the idea of just a solo flute, kind of, and a bit raw as well, pulling us through the space. To me, it kind of has a bit of a 70s strange playfulness to it, which I love. But the big breakthrough was working with singers. And I was really drawn to working with choral singers, people who are trained to sing in a choir, but having them work in sort of a pre-linguistic space. So all the words, there's no words to the music that they're saying. They're just making sounds, especially vowel sounds. And we really wanted to experiment. We didn't want it to sound very organized. We wanted it to sound a little bit like it was an organic process throughout. So composing was really strange because it's very hard to compose for vocal score because so much of the personality comes through the notes. So Kieran did a bit of a rough score that we shared with the singers, but really we didn't know how it was going to turn out until the day that we were recording. And that was one of the most fun days. We went into the recording studio, these singers showed up, and it was so cool just to see them read his score but then interpret it in a million different ways. So we could give them very strange notes. Like I'd say, like, this take, can you make it sound like they're gossiping? And they'd do it, and it sounded like that. And it was, we played with a lot of different stuff there, and I'm really happy with how it turned out.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you very much for bringing that scape and basically bringing the film to PÖFF. And time is up now. Thank you so much for joining us today. And also, I wish you all the best and a great festival journey for your film and a great international release.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me today.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm signing out. Dhanushka from PÖFF TV.